Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. In this video I'm going to take a look at VeChain. I know VeChain has been around for quite some time, but it's getting a lot of attention these days, and I do think there's a lot of misconception about what VeChain exactly is. So in this video we're going to take a little deep dive into their white paper, and then we'll talk about the market and the potential of the VeChain token. If you like the sound of that, be sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe if you make it all the way to the end. So the first thing we do is go to vechain.org, which is the official website, and I love what I'm seeing. So the first thing that we see on the main page is a link to the white paper and a link to the GitHub. So yes, that means that the VeChain blockchain is completely open source. So let's click on that white paper. So the white paper is accessible on their page. They really integrated it very nicely, very clean and easy to read format, but if you want to, you can download it as a PDF in English and Chinese. So the PDF is about 50 pages, so it's a really extensive white paper, but we'll really quickly go over it and I'll sum it up what the most important aspects are. So at the beginning, of course, we get the vision. So in phase one, we have technical consensus. This means that the blockchain community has to prove to the world why we should use blockchain and so forth. For VeChain, they think that we already passed this phase, especially for the VeChain blockchain itself, and they already have their proof of concept. So the next phase is onboarding different businesses and really start applying blockchain technology in the real world. And then finally, we have governance consensus. This means we have to try and convince the entire world and all the governments to start using blockchain for transparency and security. And then we sum it all up, what VeChain's position is. So basically, they see themselves as an enabler of blockchain technology, and they'll try to make blockchain technology as accessible as possible to everyone who wants to enter this great and awesome world of blockchain. Next, we dive into what the VeChain Tor blockchain actually is. So the big difference with VeChain and, for example, Ethereum and Bitcoin right now, they're proof of work. When it comes to Ethereum, they're trying to move from proof of work to proof of stake. But of course, there are more consensus mechanisms, and one of them is proof of authority, and this is what VeChain is using. So they started out with proof of authority 1, and just as with any consensus mechanism, there are some drawbacks, which then they are trying to solve with proof of authority 2.0. So the new proof of authority system will deliver absolute finality on blocks and transactions, significant reduction of platform risks of being temporarily disrupted, and faster convergent probabilistic finality, which will result in faster transaction confirmation for applications. Yes, that sounds good. If you want to dive into the details, be sure to check out the white paper. When we jump to the summary, basically, with this system, you as an app developer have a choice to go for the faster system or the more secure system. That's what we see right here. Alright, then we move on to meta transaction features. So these are basically the nice things that you can expect from VeChain from a developer perspective. So this is a cool one, I think. Multitask transaction. So in a single transaction, you can perform multiple tasks. This is, of course, very cost efficient. The next one is forcible transactions. So this is nice because then you can create a dependency. So you can say, I only want this transaction to execute if X or Y already has happened in the past. Then we have transaction lifecycle. The basic thing that we already know from other blockchains is that you can say this transaction will fail after 20 minutes, for example. The nice thing about this feature that they added is that you can already plan a transaction for happening in the future by saying I want this transaction to be executed when we hit block number X or Y. So that's pretty cool. And then we have the transaction fee delegation. So this is really nice, and this will help with adoption of whatever app you make on VeChain, because I can make an application and then you, for example, will never know that you're on the blockchain because I will not ask you to create a wallet. I will not ask you to pay for gas fees and so forth. No, I will pay for everything. So I, as a developer, can say I will take all the transaction fees for myself so that the user has a very nice and clean experience. And scrolling down, we see a little bit of information on on-chain governance. It's very important to know that we both have on-chain voting and off-chain voting. This also means that VeChain is not completely decentralized, so it's a very important difference with other blockchains as well. Alright, that brings us to section 3, governance, which is of course very important. As you can see here, this is the structure of the foundation. and all the stakeholders can vote. That brings us to the next question. Who are all the stakeholders? Well, the biggest, most important ones are the authority masternodes. Those are companies, people, whatever, who hold 25 million VET tokens, which is definitely a lot. There are 101 active authority masternodes right now. Also important to know, they have to be verified and approved by the foundation. Then we have economic X nodes. They can't be created anymore. They were created in 2018, and they are mainly filled by people who supported the VeChain ecosystem from the beginning. So those are people from the VeChain community that have supported the project from the start. Then we have economic nodes. Those are the only ones that can still be created, and these are the requirements. So for the Mjolnir node, you have to buy and hold 15 million VET tokens for at least 30 days. Then you have the Thunder node, 5 million, Strength node, 1 million. Even these ones are becoming really hard to achieve. I think a few months ago, this was still quote-unquote accessible if you wanted to be a node. Right now, this is definitely going to be difficult to do on your own. Then we see all the stakeholder categories and their voting power. So the two biggest ones, of course, are the mastery nodes, the authority master nodes, and the economic X nodes. They both have 40% of voting authority, and then the economic nodes have 20%. Scrolling down, then we come to the steering committee. So the steering committee, they have the final say in everything, but the steering committee is being voted on by all the stakeholders, and it is being done every 2 years. When going to the main page and you scroll all the way down, then you can see who the current steering committee is. And then when you click on them, you get all the extra information, and below you can see the advisory board. Now, when it comes to the identity of the master nodes, this is kept private. Of course, the foundation knows exactly who they are, but it's up to the different master nodes if they want to make it public, yes or no. Some of them did. So some of the companies that are supporting VeChain are publicly known, the others aren't. So if this is a good thing, bad thing, I don't know. They do this for security reasons, of course. I do think it would create more transparency if everybody would disclose their identity, but yeah, I can understand why they don't. Scrolling down, we get the quarterly financial report. I do think this is very interesting as well, because this creates a lot of transparency towards the community when it comes to how the VeChain Foundation works. Basically, this means that they are creating a report every quarter, which details what they've been up to. So first of all, we have the VET supply. Here you can see the circulating supply and all the tokens that are not in circulation yet. And you can see who's holding different tokens. So about 51% is on the open market, and the rest has been locked up. Scrolling down, we see what the expenses have been. So that is very transparent. And then we get some notes and some business development, so you know exactly what has been going on in the past 3 months. Okay, that brings us to the economic model. So we're going to take a look at what the tokenomics is, how the whole system works. It is important to know that VeChain has a dual token system. They did this to stabilize the usage of the VeChain network. Why is this important? Of course, we all know the situation with Ethereum. In Ethereum, you have the Ethereum token that represents the value of the network, but it's also being used as a utility token to power the network. So right now Ethereum is really popular. The value of the Ethereum tokens is very high, and the network is very congested, and this results into very high gas prices. And because it's so expensive to use, a lot of people are starting to look at different blockchains, which is of course not good for Ethereum, because then people are moving away from the Ethereum network. Of course, they're solving this issue, but yeah, that's a different story. This is the reason why VeChain chose for a dual token system. So from a design perspective, we see the VET token. The VET token generates Veto. So yes, this means everybody who holds VET is automatically generating Veto tokens. And then Veto tokens are used to pay for transactions and to execute smart contracts. So this means that anyone who is a VET holder can use the VeChain ecosystem and VeChain apps. It just means that maybe if you don't have enough energy, if you don't have enough gas tokens, that you just have to wait a few days to generate more, or you can simply buy more VET tokens, and then in turn you will be generating more gas tokens. Or if you really can't wait, then you can buy the gas tokens on the open market, of course. When it comes to circulating supply and so forth, the VET token is as a fixed supply, so it has a fixed cap, just like Bitcoin. Once that cap has been reached, no more tokens will be generated. The VETO tokens, of course, they are continuously generated by everybody who's holding the VET token, and they're of course continuously burned each time you use a dApp or do anything on the blockchain. This also shows you why it is very important to keep an eye on the price of VETO, because if you're not regulating the price, then there is no use of having a separate token for this. That is why they have a system to control the price of VETO, and of course this reminds you of a central bank. I think this is exactly the same system. So we can vote on the gas price and we can adjust the gas price if we think that it's going to impact the network and the network usage in a negative way. So people can vote, and then the steering committee will sign off on this if they have 2/3 of the votes. If this is still not enough to get the desired result, then we can still change the velocity. So this means the speed at which VETO tokens are being generated by the VET holders. But to do this, you need the support of all the stakeholders. So this is a pretty big thing to do, and this won't happen that much. The other one, just voting for changing gas price, will be done on a regular basis. So if we then jump to the VeChain Foundation Medium again, then we see on March the 30th a perfect example of how this system works. Here you can see that they asked the community to vote on adjusting the base gas price of the VeChain Tor. So yeah, if you want to see how it works in real life, just click on this article and then you know what you can expect. Alright, then we can dive into the use cases. Now before we do that, I do want to show you this little diagram, and this really shows you the power of the whole VeChain ecosystem. So they don't just have nice software, but they actually have also hardware to support it, and they have all the tools in their toolkit to help onboard big companies and to start using the blockchain technology. I mean, they have passive IoT devices like the NFC and RFID chips, active IoT devices, security identity devices. Then they have their whole blockchain. Then they have all their toolkits available. And then of course they have all the different apps to start building on the VeChain blockchain. So yeah, this is a really complete technology stack ready to use for anyone who wants to engage with the blockchain. Good, let's go to the examples. Provenance for food and beverages. The food sector is crippled with supply chain inefficiencies, frauds and scandals. I think everybody, no matter where you live, we have seen definitely a bunch of scandals when it comes to food in the past few years. I think the latest one is this one: seafood fraud happening on a vast global scale. 40% of 9,000 products from restaurants, markets and fishmongers were mislabeled. So yeah, the best thing that can happen is that you're buying a fish that is not the fish that you think it is. The worst thing that can happen is that you think you're buying seafood and that it's not even seafood. For example, with prawn balls sold in Singapore frequently found to contain pork and not a trace of prawn. So yeah, that's a bit worrisome at the least. The next one, of course, is an easy one. It is to combat counterfeiting. For example, if you have a Louis Vuitton bag with a chip in there, then you can track and see where it was produced, where it was sold, and so forth. So if you're buying it on the second-hand market, you at least have a way to see if there is something fishy going on, yes or no. So a similar problem can be found with cars. If you want to buy a car on the second-hand market, it would be really nice to know all the repairs and everything that could have happened with the car, that you can find it all in one place. So in other words, create a vehicle passport. This is what I've done with BMW and their Verify car app. Then with my story, I think it goes back to a similar problem as with the food market in general. Here they made an application so you can see exactly where it was created. I think they work with Italian wine companies right here, yes, in which they track wines from farming all the way to packaging and distribution. So this way you can verify that a wine is being made in a certain way and is coming really from a certain area in Italy. And then a very important one that I want to touch on is their vision on open finance. So on one hand, you have a really big portion in the crypto community that is focused on DeFi, so completely decentralized finance, that is basically saying fuck you to the traditional market And a lot of these people, they want to move away from the current corrupt banking world, and they want to create a completely decentralized financial world. And this is really important to understand the vision of VeChain. They think that the world is not ready for DeFi, and they would rather use blockchain technology to improve the old world, if I can call it that way. And that is what we are reading here. So they're more of a supporter of open finance opposed to decentralized finance. So VeChain aims to enable financial institutions and central banks through blockchain technology, transforming their current business practice to be more transparent, efficient, automated, and data-driven. And this really touches on a very important philosophical standpoint that I read about in a recent article. If you're interested in this one, I link it in the description of the video. So it's an article by Concoda on Medium. Cryptocurrencies are about to tear our society apart. So basically, he is making a case for that there are a bunch of people who no longer believe in the current system and the current way of doing things, and that a lot of people are interested in moving in a completely decentralized direction. And then on the other hand, he says that a lot of people will not be interested in this kind of decentralized system, and they will hold on to the old one, and this will create two camps, centralists and decentralists. So yeah, it's a really fun article to read, and I guess in a way we see a similar philosophical standpoint being made by VeChain. So they're more interested in supporting and improving the current system rather than a more radical decision, which is going to a fully decentralized system. Alright, this brings us to the price of VeChain, and of course also to the common misconception. A lot of people think that VeChain is just a tool to track supply chain. And if you would look at it that way, then this number here, this market cap, is absurd. Why do I say that? Well, basically, the global supply chain management market worldwide is only $20 billion, and then VeChain would be half of that. That wouldn't make any sense. Thankfully, VeChain is an entire blockchain, and the tracking of your supply chain is just one of the applications that I focused on early on. So you shouldn't compare it to any tool on the market out there, or you shouldn't limit it to that specific market. Now, when it comes to price action, I think the only important metric is who is buying these tokens. Why do I say this? Well, basically, if you have a lot of developers and a lot of companies buying VET tokens in order that their users don't have to pay for gas fees, that would mean that they buy huge amounts of VET tokens and that they are going to lock it up and never really sell it as long as people are using their app. So that would be insanely bullish. Because right now, I don't know who's buying these tokens. And if we have to be honest and we take a look at the news that has been sent out in the past 3 months, then we see a small announcement that somebody at Salesforce tried out VeChain. So this is not an official partnership, so I'm going to ignore this. Then we have the voting, it's community stuff, we can ignore this. Then we have a partnership, so on the 17th, so we will check what it did with the price. Then we have an update of the sync app, that's also internal. Then we have contributor rewards, not important, and then we're back in 2020. So looking at the price, the only important thing that happened was on the 17th, and then we see this little bump here, but everything else, there is no specific news that pushed up the price. So I think this is all speculation of retail investors, and we all know that retail investors, they usually don't have the strongest hands. So at any sign of bad economic news or any other news, they will probably sell their tokens, or if they think they had enough profit, they will sell the tokens as well. So that's why I say it's so important to know who is buying these tokens. So if companies who are building apps on the VeChain blockchain are buying the tokens, then that is insanely good news. If this is all retail investors, then yeah, this is not the greatest support for the price. So you're probably wondering what I'm going to do with VeChain. Well, I bought VeChain back in the beginning of last year, and I'm not gonna lie, if we hit $1 this bull run, I'm definitely gonna sell a significant portion and take some of my profits. Nonetheless, I will keep some tokens because I do believe in the project long term, and I'll probably dollar cost average into it in the next bear market. Why do I think this is an interesting project? Well, first of all, they have done a really good job so far. They're in contact with really big companies. I know it takes time to onboard them. I like the vision that they have, and when it comes to philosophy, I like to hedge my bets. So I'm really somebody who is a big fan of decentralization. So a lot of projects that I invest in are focused on decentralization, and that is why I think it is interesting to hedge my bet with something like VeChain, who is focused on bringing the centralized world on the blockchain as well. So this way I cover both sides, and that is why I think VeChain could be an interesting addition purely from a philosophical standpoint to any portfolio. As you all know, this is never financial advice. I'm just sharing my vision with you guys so you can make your own decisions. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it all the way to the end, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and definitely post a comment. Feel free to share what your vision for VeChain is and what price prediction you have. And then I'll see you guys all in the next video. Thanks. Bye.